Wow, it is an honor, incredible honor to be able to be here with you today. You guys have been troopers. It's so cold, and there's no chairs anywhere. That's the hard part. The first speech I ever gave in my entire life was in 8th grade, and we got a chance to choose any topic, any argument, any position. And the topic that I chose in 8th grade was I chose to talk about the dignity of human life from natural conception to natural death and the evil of abortion and euthanasia. And it wasn't like much of a stretch because, growing up, my mom, we had a fridge, like most people have refrigerators, right? And so on the fridge were the normal things, pictures of the kids, pictures, that we drew and whatnot. But there were 3 images my mom had on our fridge. The first one was of a baby that was only weeks old that had died because of an ectopic pregnancy. And you could see so clearly this child had just been conceived weeks before, but was so clearly, this is a person, that this is not only a human baby, this is a human person that mattered. The second image was a cartoon my mom had on the fridge, and it was of a person standing there with a bunch of buttons, and one of the buttons said, "You save the whales," another button said, "Save the baby seals," another button said, "Save the turtles," and the fourth button said, "Pro-choice." and the caption was, "I find it so difficult to talk to pro-choicers because I find that their logic is not as consistent as mine." And the third image was an image of a garbage bag that was wide open. And in that garbage bag were the remains of children that had been aborted and were being thrown away in the trash. But some pro-lifers had rescued the remains of those babies to treat them like people. Because those babies matter, because people matter. So that's why Mom put on her fridge. And those images are there, because of this fact, because people matter. And people matter to my mom do this because of a woman named Helen Amundsen. In 1973, Helen Amundsen was about 50 years old, and she was the head nurse at a hospital called Sinai Hospital in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And in 1973, that hospital decided to begin performing abortions. And Helen, she knew that people mattered. She knew that children mattered. She knew that her nurses mattered. And so she hated the fact that this hospital that had done such good in that world, in that part of the world, was now about to do so much evil. And they were forcing her nurses to participate in abortions. They were forcing her nurses to carry the remains of these children to be disposed. And so she went to the board of directors and she said, "This needs to stop. Either you stop doing abortions or I'm leaving." And in that moment, Helen stood. And they said, "You can leave." And so in that moment, Helen walked. And I have to tell you, that it broke her heart. It almost destroyed her life. She never went back to nursing. Not to tell stories out of school. Or her son told me that he believes that if it wasn't for her faith, she might have even ended her own life. But she stood. And she walked. And that matters. Because every person matters. Every life matters. But it broke her heart, and I think that's why we're here too, right? I think we're here because abortion and what it's done has broken our hearts. And I know so many people here, you're standing here because you know the dignity of human life, and so many people are among us because this story is part of your story. Because you found yourself at one point in a place where it seemed like life was an impossible choice. And so I know that we're surrounded by men and women who have chosen abortion. Listen, here's what you need to know. You're supposed to be here. You matter. You belong here. No matter what your past is, you are still loved. You need to know this. You are still loved, and you still matter. There's a young woman I was in communication with recently, and she said, she knew I was coming out here. She said, "Here's what you need to do, Father." She said, "You need to tell them what you told me 12 years ago. 12 years ago, this young woman found herself in a crisis pregnancy. She found herself in a place of deep shame. She describes it as a place of deep shame where she said, all these choices I made led me to this moment where she found herself pregnant, and she was scared and she was alone, and every one of her family members and almost all of her friends were saying, just get rid of it. If you do this, if you get rid of it, it won't matter anymore. She said, but Father, you said to me, you told me that my baby mattered. You told me, when I told you I didn't want to be a mom, you told me you're already a mom. And she says, you need to tell those women who are in that moment, they're already a mom. And she said, I thought I hated my baby. And I realized these many years later, I didn't hate my baby. I hated the circumstances in which I found myself. I didn't hate my baby. I was ashamed of myself. That young woman 12 years ago, she gave her son to a couple who adopted him and have loved him. And he has blessed their life, and they've blessed his life. I've met him. He's an incredible young man. And she said, they need to know that my son is a gift from God himself. But she also said that everyone needs to remember, they need to be reminded of the fact that regardless of your choices, you are still loved and you still matter. And that's why we're standing here. That's why we're walking here. And the big question, of course, can be, we're going to stand and we're going to walk. What does it matter? Like, what does it do? It's a good question. I think it's good to ask the question, what does it matter? What does it do? You know, when my grandma Helen Amundsen, left Sinai Hospital in 1973, it didn't change the hospital. It didn't change the culture. It didn't change the law. It didn't change the country. But when she walked, it changed her. When she stood, it changed her. And it changed her sons, and it changed her daughter, my mom. And that willingness to stand, that willingness to walk, it has echoed into my life. It has echoed into the life of this young woman. It is incarnate in the life of this 12-year-old boy who wouldn't be here if my grandma Helen hadn't stood, like grandma Helen hadn't walked. Every child matters. Every woman matters. Every person matters. And no matter what this does, no matter what this changes, your being here, standing, your being here, walking, it changes you. And you matter. God bless you.